Hey, what's up, people? This is day 10. Shadow Master here. If you're just tuning into this channel, it's Gab's Chief Fitness. We're out here working on trying to help men. It's kind of like a brotherhood or support group. And also, the reason why I start off these videos, I just finished doing my little run and working out the push-ups on the bridge. The reason why I usually start off by saying the day, so I say days because it's day 10 of me realizing that I wasn't going to be able to find any type of support system on the internet directly to help men out with different situations that they may be going through. So today is day 10 of me realizing that, and we've been doing a lot of different videos. The last two videos we talked about, we had feminism, and then we had male feminism, feminism 2000 I called it, and we looked at basically how the male will interact with men as a barrier, as opposed to being a real person and just really evaluating the woman, as opposed to just accepting her for what she hasn't proved herself to be. Okay, so that's what we talked about in the last video. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. And if you like the videos, go ahead and like and subscribe. So today I wanted to talk about the education system and how it plays a huge role in feminism, and basically a lot of the stuff that you find in most of the other videos that I've been talking about, and what most of the MGTOW community talks about, as well as the Red Pill community. So the education system is the topic today. We know for years they've been talking about girls being smarter than boys, but at the same time, it's 2018. We have ample research enough to know that the school system is debunked, and it's outdated. It was meant for the Industrial Revolution, and it was meant to produce out factory workers. Okay, people who would listen to instruction and basically do as they're told. And now we know nowadays that if you are in the fast-paced world, you're multitasking. You have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have your YouTube account. You're doing a lot of different things on IG. So it's really a multifaceted world. Okay, so we know it's a debunked system, first of all. Second of all, there's something called PISA, which is a system which regulates testing worldwide. And we also know this information for a long time, that the US is ranked number 29, okay, worldwide. The top 5 come from Asia. Okay, so they've been, so this type of system where you praise somebody without them having to prove themselves, or I should say proving themselves in a debunked system which hasn't been improved for hundreds of years, is a huge problem. And it creates, of course, this huge ego. Of course, this woman walking around thinking she's smarter than men, because, of course, boys, hopefully they turn into men, and girls hopefully turn into women. Okay, so, but this is the attitude that they start with, okay? So, we got this system of regulation, okay? And like I said, we know that it's a debunked system. It doesn't work. But so I think Another thing that's happened is, back to this idea of feminism being equity versus equality. They need an edge. Okay, so for years, people have been talking about why isn't this school system not being improved upon, and why are so many teachers leaving because everything is based all on standardized testing. I would have to argue that it works for the society that we live in because it's working on a local level for girls. Girls are adept at the system in place, sitting still, being able to take instruction, doing as they're told. Meanwhile, on the other hand, boys have known this for a long time, that this system is debunked. So we acted out in different ways. A lot of us dropped out. I have friends who dropped out who are very successful now, and they've always been successful, especially mentally. I feel like these people who dropped out had huge self-esteem when it came down to personal conversations on peer pressure. Okay, those guys were going to do what they wanted to do because they wanted to do it. In my experience. Okay. Meanwhile, the other people that were going to school every day, they were going through a serious training. Okay. We're talking about 14 years here of training. So, boys, I think we knew this, that it was a debunked system, and it goes back to the reality that we was talking about. Acting without thinking is not really us. Okay, and that's really the system that they have in place. They want you to memorize all this information, and when they get the standardized test, the school gets a chance to basically survive. Because if schools don't produce standardized tests that are basically a high percentage passing rate, guess what? They're going to have to shut down. Okay, so the whole purpose of a school becomes standardized testing, and if it's working for girls, that can be a huge majority. We know that they outnumber us, usually about 3 to 1, 3 or 4 to 1, all depending on where you're at. Okay, so it makes perfect sense that why do we need to change it if we have all these girls doing good, and they're able to pass the standardized test. Meanwhile, the boys suffer. Okay, so like I said before, this inherent mentality that we have is idealistic versus opportunistic. So school is all about opportunistic behavior. Okay, you're gonna kiss the teacher's butt. She's gonna give you some grace. Okay. You might have like a 55 and she gives you a 70. Okay. You scratch it up by saying you're going to do some extra credit. It never gets done, but you do it anyway. You get the 70%. Okay. So this is the type of mentality that we have inside these schools, and it's very toxic because it's creating more and more of this ego of the problems that we talk about. For instance, gaslighting is a tactic that women will use. You'll hear this in different communities. So gaslighting was started with a movie, I believe back in the 20s or the 30s. And it was a guy that had committed a murder. And he wanted to be able to retrieve some jewelry, basically that he had misplaced. And so he wanted to make his wife think that she was crazy, and so he could put her in an asylum and go do his deeds, his dirty deeds, whatever he wanted to do. So basically he's unsuccessful, but the term gaslighting came from that movie. Whereas could be either way, a man or a woman, but remember this is a man's channel, so we're talking about men being abused. So this is where a woman will use gaslighting tactics, as we call it, where somebody is trying to make you feel like you're crazy. And this could come in subtle ways, circular arguments, making things seem to be there that's really not there, emotional games, okay? Some people say narcissists cry with no tears, okay? I've seen that before, okay? So we're talking about education today, okay? So a lot of these terms, I believe, that we're going to hear in these communities get started from this, I'll call it the Femme effect that's happening in education. So, but most of the time, a lot of these tactics started when we were young, okay? For instance, you slap somebody in the head in front of you, and the kid screams, teacher turns around, you didn't do it. Somebody else did it, right? Or he did it himself, right? So this is the rabbit hole we're talking about. We're going down the rabbit hole of education. So these rabbit holes are deep, dark places where you either continue to go down that rabbit hole of ignorance or you come out. So we got gaslighting, okay? We got ignorance. Like, for instance, we talk about this thing where basically action without thinking, okay? A woman's not really concerned with how it works. It's just like, okay, let's get it done. And if you start to reveal certain information, they might go wacko, which is usually what happens. Okay, so, but this rabbit hole of ignorance, it starts off with, and why do I say that? I say that because this whole thing of a woman having to be able to prove herself is that she's going to have to take some necessary steps as well, just like us. It's not just she's getting what she wants. Work us like a mule mentally, physically, spiritually, and we're not getting what we want. Okay, they have to they got to prove themselves, okay? Just like we prove ourselves. Okay, so but this thing happens where they just don't think they can do any better, so they have to start screaming misogyny. They have to start screaming all these other things. It starts off in school because these schools make women weak. They tell them that they're smarter. If they're blessed with beauty, it ends up being a curse because that's all they tell them. So then they believe that that's the only thing that they're capable of using to get value. And so it starts off with these little books. And, remember, we got male feminists. We also have women feminists. So I hope we don't have any women feminists on this channel. And if you are, take steps so that you can, get out of that because you're hurting our community. Okay, so this rabbit hole of ignorance starts off also with these books. I was running up the bridge a few days ago, and we always iterate back to these stories. No matter what age you are, we always go back to stories because, like in America, it's just always about some story that gets you ahead. And all these movies, everything is all about stories and victory or defeat, accomplishment or, no accomplishment. So anyway, I was trying to go up the bridge and I remember the little train story, and it came in my head, and I remember that it was saying, I think I can. And in my mind, I was like, why would I say I think I can? I'm supposed to say I know I can. So instead of I think I can, I'm telling myself I know I can, and I get up the hill. and I'm able to finish, the rest of the route. So, but these books, they're all about making boys and girls weak from the time that they're young. And by the time they're able to, fourth, fifth grade, now the girls start to get praise, and the boys, they really get left behind in a sense as far as being able to really develop themselves. Okay, so we got this. Now we got this strain of feminism that's been infecting the schools heavily in the 80s and the 90s, where we don't see men teachers anymore. We only see women. Okay, so now this is the third strain of education. They've seen that it's been failing. They've been giving us all these books of ignorance. They put extreme feminism in there, where it's a ratio of 4-to-1 women over men, and they still refuse to change the system that's in place. And so now we're in for the third strain, which is LGBT material being passed along, because it's all about money. Okay, private business is the ability to be able to provide products and services. So we've seen a string of products and services that's been all geared towards females. Now it's going to be all geared towards the LGBT community. So men, we got to get stronger. If you have children, you need to really take a real interest in the development of your child, because the research is out. I mean, it's amateur night if you're still concerned about sending your child to a school where it's all geared towards girls. Even if your child is a girl, it's going to create the Femme effect, which is this feminism ego, which is going to make it difficult for her to be able to have relationships as well with other men, because let's face it, these women leave a trail of blood, and I've mentioned this before. It's just a whole bunch of men, and by the time they get to us, we don't want anything to do with them, because they have so much baggage, and they've kind of run out of tricks by that time. And it's just at that time, the only people that'll really want to sleep with them is a simp. I did a small video on that last time as well, where I talked about male feminism, and I talked about simps as well. But those are the only men that'll sleep with these type of women at that point, once they've run out of tricks. Because once they run out of tricks, they become kind of like a junkyard dog, and they just kind of order, and you're supposed to obey. Okay, so none of us want to be with a junkyard dog. And so this is why we have these conversations, and we're trying to improve our lives and just get a lot better. There is no breaks. Fuck TGIF, fuck Saturday. Some people might be trying to recover right now from the club. Some people may be just getting in from the club, all depending on where you're at. It's all good. Just make sure you get it in tonight, because there's no breaks, okay? You party hard, you got to play hard, okay? So today we've been talking about education. I know I went a few different places. It's so much to talk about in these topics. And so I talked about how a lot of these terms will come out of education. For instance, like the gaslighting. Also, just this real extreme feminism. And also shaming tactics also is a big thing that comes out of school. And so men, we're all being treated as a girl, and you have to understand that. That's why I'm talking about education today, is because all these tactics, they're female in nature, because we used them when we were children so we can basically get the teacher's favor. So that's an opportunistic model as opposed to having honor. Now, I could imagine, maybe back in some different countries where they beat you, maybe 100 years ago or something like that. I could imagine that those schools probably had more honor. If they hit you on your hand or something like that with a branch, people would probably start to tell the truth. But with a system which doesn't have consequences, all they're going to do is just give you detention. I mean, that's not really like a consequence. I'd prefer even running. If you're a principal in the school, I mean, make a child run. Make him do a karate class for like 3 hours and have to fight a few people if he got into a fight. But just the consequences that they have in place is really child's play. And even the consequences are designed for girls as opposed to boys, because I think if they had anything too stringent, the girls would cry misogyny. And it's been so easy for the girls to be able to do that. Guys, don't think that anything that's happening as an adult has not happened as a child. These same things happen when you're a child. Girls get into a situation, they get back down, they can't explain why they have another boyfriend or something like that. I've seen that at my high school where I went. They had another boyfriend, and they got caught by the boyfriend, couldn't explain it, and they cry misogyny. Oh, they didn't even know this, or they didn't know that. So so these things start real early, and the support system that they have in place is what causes the trauma once we get older, because we've been talking about this for a few days. There's no consequences. Girls can be faultless, women can be faultless. So there's just real no consequences that's in place. And so this education system, it really has that support system. And it's really catered towards girls, and we know that based on everything I said. They constantly repeat that statistic that girls are smarter than boys. Okay, so we want to watch for that. If you're a dad, be careful where your child's going to school. There's resources out there, certain cartoons that you can try and find depending on the culture where you come from. I think that it's really important that every child gets exposure to his own culture, which doesn't really happen. It's not a multicultural educational system, which is another problem, because it creates this local mindset as opposed to a universal mindset. And it's interesting because it's still feminism and feminine, because if you have just like Americans, a lot of American ideals are that they swear that they're better than other people from other countries when they haven't even proved themselves. Meanwhile, when you look at the statistics, there's no reason that they're really better than anyone other than their ability to consume. I mean, that's really the only reason why you'd be really number one. So today, this was the video, education, how it plays a role in the Femme effect, the ego of feminism in our reality. Hey, take care. Like I said, if you haven't gotten your workout in yet, make sure you do that tonight. There is no breaks. Make sure you have a good day, good weekend, and let's get this money. All right, peace. Big up to the black, white, yellow, purple, whatever.